Hey guys, Derek Sabori here. Welcome to the Underswell, the School of Understanding. I wanted to create a little video here, a little experience to show you exactly what you get when you enroll in one of my courses. I wanted to show you the flow and the feel, the look. So let's dive in. Give me a couple minutes here and I will show you exactly what your experience will be like when you sign up for any of my courses. First of all, why me? Good question. Why me? Well, I've got 24 years of experience in the apparel industry. 19 years of that was with Volcom, and I was their vice president of global sustainability. But not only that, but I got to build a sustainability program from the ground up. There was nothing. It was just a few of us that started it. I took that excitement and that passion and we built it into a really good program there. But I spent my last years with them as their vice president of global sustainability, which was an amazing job and an amazing ride. I also got to study and contribute to sustainable fashion for 12 of those years. So we had been working on that program for a long time, and about 12 of those years were spent just kind of mostly focused on sustainable fashion. I spent about 5 years, a little bit more, working under Kering's guidance. At one point, Kering was Volcom's parent company. And if you're not familiar with their sustainability program, check it out. They've got one of the best in the industry. And I'm a college instructor at Orange Coast College. I developed and I teach their Sustainability in Apparel Certificate program. That's 3 semesters worth of sustainability teaching. It's about 16 weeks each course. There's 3 of those courses. So there's a lot of content that we have developed over there and that I've been able to share with students. Also, I'm a sustainability and business consultant and a brand entrepreneur since 2015. I went out on my own to start my own brand with a co-founding partner. It's called Kozm. And I also started this, the Underswell, working with brands, working with individuals to help guide them on their sustainability journey. And our brand Kozm is a brand that is a certified B Corp. It's kind of taking the playbook that I learned along the way and applying it in the real market space. So whatever I can do, whatever I've learned, I'm going to share it with you. But what I never want to claim is that I'm a know-it-all, that I know everything. I have been downloaded with tons of information, and I have had some amazing mentors and people who have inspired me that I have learned from, and watching other brands and watching the industry involved in conferences and world travels. So the bottom line, am I still learning? Absolutely. And of course, and we all will, and that is one thing that I really pride myself in, is that I'm a student forever. I love learning, I love finding out about new things, and I am totally open to new ideas, but whatever I learn, I'm going to turn around and share with you. So I definitely don't claim for this to be a one-shot program that will teach you every single thing there is. We just possibly can't learn it all in this short a time. So this is sort of your guidebook and an introduction to get you going and rolling. So what do you get when you sign up for the course? Well, that's a good question. You get 12 lectures that are really similar to this. There's going to be a flow and there's slide presentations and there's a couple photos here and there and rolling out, and you get the video and I interject and I share things, and I'll share some anecdotal things and try to guide you through the lectures. You will also get access to the group meetups that we're going to be doing once a month. Once a month, each course that you enroll comes with 6 months worth of meetings. And so that is time in a small group setting for you to interact with me, ask questions. Let's just do some roundtable, work with each other, and build off of each other's knowledge. But it's going to be I'm looking forward to it, a really great opportunity to dive deeper into what you're learning, talk about it, reinforce it, and get any questions clarified during those times. The learning platform, what you get when you enroll, the lectures like this live on a learning site called Thinkific. It's a really good tool, and there will be weekly modules that I roll out. So week 1, here's your course material. Week 2, here's your course material, etc. Really easy, organized, easy to follow. You get these video lectures. You also will get assigned readings. We've got a couple books that I highly encourage you to read along the way. You get suggested resources and links and ideas, and also a lot of, hey, and check this out. Here's further information. Go watch this movie. Go watch this talk. Go read this article, etc. So a lot of links, a lot of supplemental learning, if you will. But this is a little bit of what the tool looks like. And you can see over here on the left side of the screen, there's little opportunities for me to put these little capsules in there. There's a before we get started, week 1, week 2. Then you pop them open, boom, they expand, and it tells you whether it's a video, a presentation, just a text message, and you can just play it right through there, all through the learning system. It's super easy, super intuitive. So why do I teach? I teach because I love this stuff. One, though, it's because this wasn't a part of my education, and that really bothered me. So my undergrad degree was in studio art. I quit engineering to move over to studio art, and then I went back to school for my MBA. I took one social ecology class that talked to me about environmental impacts and sort of a macro look and how our actions in one place can have a really global effect in another. And we talked a little bit about global warming, but this is back in the mid 90s. And it just really bothered me that by the time I got through even my MBA program, that nobody was talking about social responsibility, environmental impacts, doing business better, and this idea of a triple bottom line: environmental, social, economic, balancing them all, having good governance and responsibility, and behaving in a corporate way the same way you would in a human way. So that always just really struck me. Once I started learning, I was irritated that nobody had ever taught me before. So I want to share that with you guys. There were inspiring people in my life who encouraged me to learn, and I really, really want to pass that on. We all need a spark. We all get our spark from someone, somewhere, something. And if I can help be that spark, then that means a lot to me. I've learned so much while I was at Volcom and under Caring. And I believe everyone in every part of the business throughout the entire organization, in all industries, all product types, should be familiar with these concepts. I really believe too that this should be taught throughout the school and throughout education. I've been teaching for a few years now at Orange Coast College, and what I wanted to make a fast track option for students and professionals. I was watching professionals come in and take the courses, and yes, we learned a lot and it was a great experience. But I know it's not for everybody, that 3-semester program course load, that's 16 weeks for 3 different semesters, isn't really something that is practical for everybody. So I wanted something that you could do at your pace, on your time, and get some interaction still with me, and get this and absorb this information on your own at your pace. And then lastly, it's because I believe that this should be a part of all general education and all professional development, no matter what your career path is. And like I said, I teach these courses through the lens of apparel and apparel manufacturing. But if you think about it, we're all making the same stuff. Making a product goes through the same life cycle. Raw material extraction, processing of those materials, the manufacturing, the warehousing, distribution, office spaces, the consumer use, the end of life, all the way to the grave or its end of life, what happens in between, all the impacts, whether it is a t-shirt, a pair of jeans, a car, a house, a building, a remote control, we're all going through the same process and making the same stuff. So this will apply to you no matter what role you're in. And I really believe that this information is crucial. How do we talk about climate change and the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement and biodiversity and ecosystems and living wages? How do we talk about that in the right language, using the same language, and all working towards the same goals? So whether you are in e-commerce and marketing, human resources, you're a designer, a developer, a CEO, a COO, every role has the opportunity to come and learn this information with me. So how I teach. There's a rhyme to my reason, and you gotta believe me, because we start off in an interesting place. We must start with the foundational learning. We're taking this slow. And in my college courses, the first course is dedicated to the foundational learning, the fundamentals, the essentials, the language, the right words, the vocabulary, the concepts, and then we move off into the apparel industry specific. But we've got to take this slow and build a really good base before we can move on, so that by the time you get to the point where you are reading industry reports and news articles and hearing great speakers talk on the matter, that you are following along and in line with the language that they are using. So believe me, when it feels like we're just kind of talking about the basics and definitions and things, that it's going to help your learning along the way. And sorry, not sorry for the history lesson. I always go back and rewind and look at where all of this stuff came from. How far can we go back? Well, we're going to go back to the Industrial Revolution, and we're going to talk about when we first started seeing environmental degradation and started seeing the warning signs, and what the labor movement has been like, and what the environmental movement looked like, the modern version, the preservationists, the conservationists, etc. We're going to run through it all so that you have a really good understanding of the fact that this has been in development for a long time. It's not something that's brand new, and we just didn't start chipping away at this. Society, communities, individuals, leaders, organizations, entrepreneurs, and brands have been focusing on this very topic for years and years now. So we are just carrying on that torch, if you will. But you've got to trust me and believe me that these history lessons and this dive into history will really serve us well in the later courses, and we will almost always go back and remind ourselves of those first and early movements. So it's fascinating stuff, but you got to stick with me in these earliest lectures. I always start with a recap. Each lecture, I always remind you of what we talked about in the previous lecture. Each lecture, I always talk about, each lecture, I always go back and remind you about what we spoke about in the previous lecture. I layer them on top of each other so each one kind of links in, and I go back and do a little rewinding. I never leave each lecture as its own individual module. I like to make sure that they are all linked and we can go back and reference and build upon what we've already learned. But I think it's important to kind of start every course with a little rewind, refresh, and then go forward with the new concepts. Repetition is key, so I will hammer and hammer over a lot of these concepts and the terms and the framework, so it might feel like, well, we've already talked about that, but if we have, it's because it's important. I want you to learn it, and I really want to lock it into the memory bank for you. And remember vocabulary words, there are a ton of them. There are a lot of acronyms, a lot of words that we will use over and over. But you believe me, you've got to believe me, when we get to the end of it, you will remember and see that these words that we covered are the words that are being used in all the language, and that hopefully now you have a really good understanding of them. You understand the context in which they can be used, how to apply them, when to pull them out, where to use them, how they interconnect to everything else. So vocabulary is our friend. And take on the supplemental learning to really get the most out of this. So listen, I've been at this for a long time and I've gathered a lot of information, but I am not the one source of information, and I will never claim to be. I want you to go through and read the links that I provide, the articles, watch the movies, watch the clips, do whatever you can to supplement this information to really make this knowledge stick and allow you to apply it out in the real world. And yes, I teach like a college instructor, I guess because I am, but I try to keep a flow, and I try to make this as dynamic and interesting and in the same manner that we would have in the college classroom. I want to make it feel like I'm there with you. I want it to be personable, and I think those monthly meetups that we can do in person or via Zoom or WebEx will allow you to connect, ask questions, clarify things, and discuss with other colleagues and counterparts so that we can really make the most of this, of what you're learning, apply it, and see what other people think as well and get different perspectives. The course content flow, what you'll get when you sign up. Remember, there are 2 different courses, and then there's a third course if you really want to continue on and do sort of a one-on-one mentorship to really cement in your learnings. But no matter what, you don't get there without course number 1. And you don't get to course number 2 without course number 1. So everything starts here with the essentials and the foundations, where we look at the concepts, the general concepts of sustainability, sustainable development, and social responsibility, what all of those things mean, just sort of the general foundation. What are we even talking about when we talk about sustainability? We'll look at the history of the movement, like I said, from the Industrial Revolution up through the 60s, the 90s, and all the way up to modern times. The environmental concerns, the top concerns that we face, the top social or people-related concerns, whether it comes to labor or manufacturing rights or social responsibility in our supply chains. We'll look at life cycle thinking. Everything goes through that life cycle. What are the impacts that occur at each stage of the life cycle? We'll talk about reporting and assessing. How do brands decide if they're doing well? How do they share the things that they are doing and not doing? We'll talk about rankings, who's ranking whom, what companies perform the best, what do investors look for, what do consumers look for, what are the nonprofits rating the brands, and what are consumers thinking, consumer sentiment, what do the surveys say, and what are they looking for? We'll also look at the Sustainable Development Goals. We'll look at the history of the United Nations and the development of these development goals, and we'll look at all 17 of those Sustainable Development Goals individually on their own. We'll look at standards and certifications, and then we'll wrap up the course with a bit on sustainable living. How do you apply all this? How do you actually look for these things in your life, apply it in your life, and what can we do to be better stewards and better citizens out in our global community? And then course number 2, if you decide to keep moving on, and I urge you to, because this is where it starts to get really rich and we can apply those concepts and look at what industry says and what nonprofits are saying and what the analysis is and recommendations are for kind of some of the top thinkers in the space. But we will look at the history of sustainable fashion. That's a 2-part lecture series, which I really like. How did we get here? And let me stop real quick and remind you that even if you're not in the apparel industry, we all wear clothes. We are all buying clothes and products, and it is just part of our life no matter what. And to understand how these products are made, what we are doing here to make this industry more sustainable, more just, a little more fair, and at least be aware of the impacts that we are having, then you can apply those to whatever industry you are in. I can almost guarantee that. But we'll be looking at what the Global Fashion Agenda reports say, the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, Greenpeace, Fashion Revolution, Stand Earth, and KPMG and Textile Exchange. So this is a blend of nonprofit groups and industry organizations coming together, giving us some of the best data, resources, information, recommendations that are out there. We will cover all the topics you need to know. I want to familiarize you with each of these topics and make sure that you really understand every one of the issues, who all the organizations are, what the innovations mean, why they're important, and what part of the value chain and what issues they actually address. I will give you real-world, current, and up-to-date information and a historical context, and of course, added insight from the experience that I've gained over these last 20-plus years working on it, hands-on. I want to share it with you. I want you to learn. So there it is. I hope you'll join me. I hope you will come and join me in these courses, learn with me. I'd be honored to be your guide and help you along on this and just share with you what I have learned and what I know now, because it's something I'm really passionate about. All right, so I hope I'll see you in the classroom. If you've got any questions, hit me up at theunderswell.com. But there you go. All the pricing models are on the website. Can't wait to get started. I'll see you in the classroom.